Well, hello there and welcome back. It's another edition of Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Good to have you along for this 30-minute ride. I can guarantee you one thing, you will learn lots about workplace rights and employment laws. That is what we endeavor to do every week, demystify this topic, and we're going to do it again. Momentarily joined by John Pincus from EmploymentLawyer.ca. We always tell you to reach out to John and the team, any concerns, even if it's just a simple phone call. That number, 1-855-821-5900, to back it up with the email address, ask@employmentlawyer.ca. We'll give that out throughout the show as well. We always have a main topic. This week it will be employment workplace, 3 myths actually in the workplace that need to be banished. Got to get them out of there. We will give you details on those a little later on. We'll have some viewer questions, some emails, a whole mixed bag of stuff, but it's all in the effort to make you that much smarter. So we will get going right away with all that. John Pincus is our guy this week. I haven't seen you for some time, my friend. How are you? And what are you going to get us warmed up with this week, pal? What do you got?
It's been too long, and I'm glad to be here, especially right now. A lot of economic uncertainty, a lot of financial uncertainty. I'm hearing the same thing from clients time and time again. Too few positions, far too many candidates. And what that means is that you need to take whatever measures that you can take to protect yourself if you've lost your job. And that really speaks to this example that I want to talk about. I had a case recently where an individual was working as a logistics manager for a manufacturing company for about 12 years. Wasn't looking for a new job out of the blue. He's approached by LinkedIn, as often is the case, by a headhunter. Says, I've got a great new opportunity for you with an event management company, and they want to meet you. They want to offer this job to you, or they want to potentially offer a job to you. They think your experience is a great match for them. So he meets with them. They offer him all kinds of promises of advancement, career advancement, salary, growth, and promotion opportunities, equity opportunities, all kinds of things. And he says, all right, just give me the contract. This sounds like a great opportunity. So he takes the contract, he looks at the salary, he looks at the benefits, the vacation. Looks good. He signs off. Well, lo and behold, 2 years later, he's told, you know what, we just lost a couple major clients, and unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go. And pursuant to your contract, you've got 2 weeks pay that we owe you, so we're going to pay you 2 weeks pay, and we're so generous, if you sign this release, we'll pay you another 2 weeks. And he comes to me and he says, this just really doesn't feel fair. They promised me the world. I left this job I'd been at for 12 years, and now I've got a month of security, financial security, to help me find a new job. There must be something you do. Well, fortunately, there was something that I could do. Number one, his contract was no good. They could not rely on the contract, and therefore he was owed his full severance entitlements. And number two, because he had been recruited so aggressively from that place that he'd been employed for a long time, a secure position, that's going to factor in. So after discussion with him, I determined that he's actually owed as much as 10 months' pay. Even though he had been there for a short period of time, the law takes into account the fact that he was recruited from secure employment. So there's some really important lessons here. For employees, number one, if you're leaving a new job to go to another job, especially if you have not been looking and you're happy where you are, that is the time to negotiate your contract. If you think about it, you are never going to have more leverage than you have at the moment that you are employed and an employer wants to pull you away from there. So use that to your advantage while you can. Get a termination clause and other provisions that preserve your full entitlements. And as an employer, I think the lesson here is be transparent with your employees. If you're not really sure you can offer them a secure position, if it's riding on a few clients, then be upfront about that. It'll prevent disputes from arising later.
And it's always a good plan before you sign off on any contract, before, like you said, vacation, great. Money's great. Off we go. Send it to you, let you have a look at it, and you'll be able to throw out the red flags as to you need to get this, this, and this out of there. It's going to cause you problems in the future, right?
There's no substitute. That's right. There's no substitute to speaking with an employment lawyer, because there are things that you are not going to know. You're not going to understand them, no matter how sophisticated a person you are. A lot of lawyers don't understand them if they're not employment lawyers. So you have to speak to a lawyer to properly make sure you're protected.
Let's get a phone call in there, a viewer phone call, see what they have to say, then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
Senior, I'm in my 70s, and I had a part-time job. I was there for about 3.5 years, and it was about 20 hours a week. They had originally said to me I had my choice of either working out of the office for the phones or I could work from home. The vice president came and he said, well, I'm going to give you your forms. And when the form arrived from the administrator, it said that I wasn't coming back to work.
Did they offer you any severance? Did they pay you any severance?
Nothing.
How do you handle that?
Well, First of all, that's clearly inappropriate. I mean, if you're terminated from your position and you're terminated like that on a without cause basis, you are owed severance. And the failure to pay severance in that situation is not just a wrongful dismissal, it's actually a statutory violation and a pretty serious one. And the other thing is, even though we're talking about a short service part-time employee, they still have rights. Part-time employees have the same rights as full-time employees. The only difference is because you make less, your severance is based on less. So let's pull up the Pocket Employment Lawyer and pull up the stats here. And if we look at here, we see the age of 73. That's going to have a factor. And even though that the years of service are only 3 years of service, we still see a severance entitlement of 5 months. So that's going to be $12,500 for someone who earns $30,000 a year. That's going to be a very significant entitlement, and that person should definitely be pursuing their full severance. And perfect example why you go to an employment lawyer when you lose your job. Don't take what the employer says at face value.
And again, John, he can do it in his head, right? We all know that. John Pincus can do that in his head. You can go to PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca anytime and use that severance calculator. It's built in, it's baked in, it's free, it's anonymous, so give that a spin. Main topic time on the other side of the break, 3 workplace myths that need to be banished. They are out of there. We'll do that after a short break as we continue lots more of Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Don't go anywhere.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
Okay, welcome back. Ask a Lawyer on CP24. Thank you so much for sticking around. It is that time of the show where we give you main topic. But first, the number and the contact to reach John Pincus anytime and his team. There you go, 1-855-821-5900. Email ask@employmentlawyer.ca. Scan that QR code on the top right. That'll take you there as well. Okay, the main topic was 3 myths, workplace myths that need to be banished because everybody thinks about these things, John. They are wrong. Well, you're going to clear it up for us. Number 1, pal, is this. Your employer can make changes to your job whenever they want. Have at her. They can do that, can they not?
Well, often they can't. It's really going to depend, right? If you have signed off on something at the beginning of your employment and said, you can do this, you can change my location of work, you can place me on a temporary layoff, you can do all these things, then they have the right to do that, right? Because now they have your consent. And if an employer has your consent, they can do it. And they can do minor things without your consent. We're going to change your benefits plans. We're going to slightly move your reporting relationship. We're going to slightly change your duties. Employers have the right to do that as well. But big changes, things like changes in your pay, major changes to your work location, especially if you're going to another city, for example, a layoff that you haven't agreed to in the past.
Change of shift.
Yeah. That can be something. These are things that if the employer tries to do it without your consent, that can be a breach of your contract. That can be a constructive dismissal. Now, you're not going to know if it's a constructive dismissal because it is a complex analysis. It is a nuanced analysis. You need to speak to an employment lawyer to understand if it is. But you don't want to wait. Now, there are certain things that you can kind of take your time, you can kind of wait with. If you're put on a temporary layoff, you don't have to act right away because you're not there to condone the changes, you're off work. And so what the law says there is you still want to speak to an employment lawyer, but you don't necessarily have to act right away. But other things like changes to your pay, changes to your title, changes to your duties, if they're major changes, and you continue to actively work through those changes, well, you're now signaling to the employer that you're condoning those changes, and you might lose the right to do it later. So if you feel like you've been constructively dismissed, if there's been a major change, we say, I didn't agree to this, I didn't sign up for this, that's the point to speak with an employment lawyer, not a year later.
Myth number 2 is this: it's better to resign than get fired. Why? Because it doesn't hurt your employment record. It doesn't look bad. It's not blemished, right? That's not true.
Yes, the employment record.
Yes.
This is what most people think of as the record of employment. So let me dispel a myth about the record of employment. The record of employment is not a permanent record. It is between you and the government. Your prospective employers are not going to see the record of employment. Usually, it's going to be used for employment insurance. It might be used for other career programs with the government eligibility and so on, but generally speaking, it's going to be used for EI. If your employer is on the cusp of firing you, often the worst thing that you can do is resign, because now they're not going to owe you anything. Now it's a voluntary resignation. Even in a situation, if you're contemplating, you know what, I think I don't like these changes, and I think the employer might fire me, but I'm thinking of quitting so that I can claim my severance that way. You know, when people come to me with that, I often say, well, if your employer is thinking of firing you, wait until that happens. Even if you think the employer is going to allege cause, that is usually a better situation to be in than claiming a constructive dismissal where it is your burden to prove that the employer's actions were a constructive dismissal.
Third workplace myth that needs to be banished, John. We're getting this one out of here as well. Your employer doesn't have to give you a severance package if you've, made a few mistakes at work, right?
Yeah, we call just cause the capital punishment of employment law for a reason, right? It is the capital punishment of employment law because it is reserved for the most egregious kinds of misconduct. Theft, fraud, competing with your employer while you're working for your employer, things like that, things that they really don't necessarily need to give you a second chance because they're so serious in nature. And mistakes, even if you're making repeated mistakes, very hard for an employer to justify using that as a pretext to terminate your employment for cause. And so if they do that, that is the most important time to speak to an employment lawyer because you could be owed up to 24 months pay and they have offered you nothing. So don't be intimidated. Your employer's going to send you a long letter trying to make you look like the bad guy, like this terrible person. Let us work through that with you and determine whether actually they have cause for dismissal. 90% of the time, they don't.
Those are the 3 myths for today. We'll keep it rolling on here. Let's get to a second viewer phone call right now. Listen up.
My story is that I got terminated in the company and I was working as a shop manager as an independent contractor. And on the company premises, I was working as an hourly basis and open contract, no deadline. Question, is there any entitlement I have with this company?
Very, very common issue, right? The issue of misclassification. The key thing to understand here is that just because someone is called an independent contractor does not make it so. The law doesn't care about a contract if you've called yourself an independent contractor because if it's an illegal contract, it's void. The law doesn't care if they've been paying you without source deductions because the way you're taxed doesn't change the reality on the ground. If you're called an independent contractor, the law cares about who you're in business for. Are you in business for yourself or are you in business for the company you're working for? And if you are in business for the company that you are working for, no matter what you are called, no matter how they are paying you, if they're substantially controlling your work, you're financially dependent on them, even if you might be doing some work on the side elsewhere, you are likely going to be characterized properly at law as an employee. And that means you have the same rights to vacation, the same rights to overtime, and most importantly, the same rights to severance. So in that scenario, if you're working as a shop manager and you're day in, day out working there and you're being represented as an employee there, or even if you're not being represented as an employee there, but they are controlling you as if you're an employee there, you're going to be entitled to severance.
We'll take a short break, then we'll take a little skip down the path of disability law, which is the other half of what the firm does. So we'll get to that as we continue here with more Ask a Lawyer on CP24. Stay with us.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. John Scholes here. John Pincus as well from the firm is giving you all the information on the show this evening. Reach out to John anytime. The number remains the same, 1-855-821-5900. But for the purpose of this segment, email's a little different. Ask at disabilityrights.ca. You can always scan the QR code as well. John, we talk about this every week. You know, I know you have a lot of friends on the other side of the hallway doing the disability law because there's often a lot of handshaking between the two, a lot of crossover between the two. So basically, before I get into our first audio question for this segment, what is it basically that you have to do, the interplay between you and the disability lawyers, yeah?
There's so many cases where we have individuals who've lost their job and they're on a medical leave, long-term medical leave, and so they've lost their job, but they still need the disability benefits. And if the disability benefits are also cut off at that time, that's a double hit, right? And you need to deal with both of those things. Usually you want to deal with the disability side first, because the disability side, if you've lost an entitlement to insurance and you're now cut off from that and you're still not able to work, we could be talking about years of compensation. Now, it's partial compensation. It's not going to be your full salary, but it often ends up being worth actually much more than the severance package.
And that's the beauty of the firm. You don't have to go somewhere else dealing with two different shops all under one roof, which makes it much more, streamlined and convenient for sure. Audio questions, we get them all the time. A lot of people want to know things. The first one for this show is right now. John, listen up.
I suffered a mental breakdown from extreme stress and overwork. With support from my family doctor and psychologist, I started a gradual return to work plan. Before I could resume full-time hours, I was fired. Now, my depression and anxiety are worse. My doctors told my insurer about this, but they're still cutting off my LTD, saying I can work. What can I do?
There you go. Right.
Wow.
How do you handle that?
Terrible, terrible situation, right? You know, how could it be worse? You're now lost your job and you're under the support from the insurer when you need it the most. Now, this is a perfect example of why it's so important for your employment rights and your disability rights to be coordinated. The first thing that I'm typically going to do here is I'm going to refer this person to one of the people in our firm who handles disability law, because that's the first thing we want to deal with. We want to get your disability insurance taken care of, right? Make sure that you're compensated properly for the loss of those benefits that you clearly should not have lost in this situation. And once that's done, then we talk about, well, now the employer has an obligation to you. First of all, they've flagrantly breached the Human Rights Code because they've terminated employment in the middle of a return to work. Big no-no, right? That's number one. The second thing is there's going to be a severance entitlement, and because that employment was terminated in the midst of return to work leave, that severance entitlement is going to be longer than it otherwise would typically be. So there's so much to be said for what happened here, and there are two entities that are going to have a lot to answer for in that situation.
And they are in good hands indeed. Here's the second question I got for you, John. How many, oh, you love it. There's the appeal word. How many times should I try appealing a long-term disability claim?
Right, right. Well, the reality that my friends on the disability side always like to say is the insurers love to see you appeal. They love to see you appeal. They say, oh, appeal again. You have more medical evidence. Appeal as much as you want. Why? Because it puts them in control. It's an internal appeal. And that way, they don't have to worry about any kind of legal challenge, any kind of legal action. So, yes, you have the right to an appeal. And with the help of a disability lawyer, that might be the first step that you want to take to show that you've made a good faith effort to use their system. But once you've exhausted that process, you have to remember that the insurer is the one controlling the appeal. And so is the insurer really going to be motivated to pay you out when they can simply come up with some kind of convoluted reason to deny you? That's the point where you really need a disability lawyer. We have many who are great on their team, myself not included, John, I'm sorry to say.
Right, that's okay.
But I've got many friends on the team who do an excellent job, and I work with them frequently, and they're very effective in what they do.
And that covers the disability portion of the show. You want to reach out to John. He'll set you up with a member of his team anytime. By the way, we'll take a short break, bounce back over to a phone call from the employment side as we roll on. More of Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Stay with us.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
Okay, Ask a Lawyer continues. Thank you so much for staying with us through the break. We got a few minutes to go here. We always like to wrap it up with a phone call, but first the contact information anytime to reach out to John Pincus and the team. There you go, 1-855-821-5900 by phone, email ask@employmentlawyer.ca, scan that QR code as well, and you will be off to some worthy information and some help for sure. We always get to a phone call, John, from the last segment of the show. One of our viewers called in, so let's listen to that, and we shall dissect whatever comes over the speaker and the TV screen next. Listen up.
My company offered me severance, 6 months. If I get a job over that 6-month period, can they stop the payments?
How long have you worked there for?
16 years.
And what kind of a job and how old are you?
Sales, and I'm 55.
Maybe starting with the segment component first before we ask about losing part of it, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So let's first look at what someone like this who has that kind of tenure and that kind of role could be owed. So let's put up the pocket employment lawyer here and see what that entitlement looks like. So 55 years old, a sales position, 16 years service, not an insignificant tenure, $97,000. And so they've been offered 6 months, and we can see that that is essentially 1/3 of what their entitlement is. Their entitlement is well into the 6 figures. So this is a significant entitlement. This is not a decision that should be made lightly. But at the same time, answer to that question, can they stop the severance if you find a new job? Well, that really depends if you've reached an agreement yet, right? If you have not reached an agreement and you find a new job before that period elapses, then your entitlements are going to change because severance is a loss-based entitlement. So the very first conversation I have with anyone who comes to me is, and I usually start with this at the very beginning of that phone call, what do you feel like is going to be your job outlook? And if that person tells me that they think they're going to be in a comparable position, making comparable money in the next few weeks, couple months, I may very well tell that person, you know what, you've been offered a very low severance package, but given that you're about to start a new job that's comparable, it may actually make sense to accept that severance package. We do occasionally give advice to accept the severance package in the right circumstances. But more often than not, especially in today's age, and given the current state of things, most people come to me and they say, you know, I really don't know. And yeah, I think I might be able to find a job, but it's not going to be a comparable job. It's not going to be a job that pays me what it used to pay me, or it's not going to be a job that I can reasonably commute to. And what the law says here is, well, you're allowed to be discerning, right? If someone's about to offer you the same job and you're earning within 3, 4, 5% of what you were earning previously, then it is a problem if you turn down that kind of job offer. But if you're finding a job that pays half the amount or 75% of the amount that you used to earn, well, it's not necessarily a job that you need to take. It's not necessarily a job that you should take. So don't sell yourself short in that process. Let's help you get the protection and the severance package that you deserve.
And that is all the time we have for this week. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for watching. Reach out anytime to that phone number and email, and we'll talk to you next time. 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. And we'll see you next time right here on Ask a Lawyer on CP24.